President of the Seattle Philanthropic Advisor Network. For those of you who are new to SPAN, our mission of SPAN is to learn firsthand from philanthropists how they give, why they give, and also how they work with advisors in their giving. And so appreciate you being with us today. For 2021, we have a number of gold and silver sponsors. Our gold sponsors are D.A. Davidson Trust Company, Deloitte, Fulcrum Capital, Helsel Fetterman, Morgan Stanley, U.S. Bank Wealth Management, and Whittier Trust. Our silver sponsors are Bader Martin CPAs, Clark Nuber, Columbia Bank, Del Prado Philanthropy, Ernst & Young, Goldman Sachs, Laird Norton Wealth Management, 180 Foundation, and the Seattle Children's Hospital. Today, we are very fortunate to have Sarah Hopper, founder of Sound Philanthropy, introduce our presenters and lead today's conversation. Prior to founding Sound Philanthropy, Sarah worked as Vice President of Philanthropic Services at the Seattle Foundation. She graduated from Smith College and worked in the financial sector before moving to the nonprofit sector. Special thanks to Sarah for inviting Howard S. Wright and his wife, Kate Janeway, to speak to us today about their philanthropic journey and well as plans for the future. So at this point, Sarah, I'd like to turn it over to you. The podium's yours.
Thanks, Mark. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining. It's great to see everybody. To begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish, Interior Salish, Suquamish, Duwamish, and Yakama Nation tribes, and to thank them for allowing us onto their land. They took care of this land before it was colonized, and they continue to care for, honor, and defend their land. We honor with gratitude the land itself and all of the native tribes of Washington State. I would also like to acknowledge the historical and systemic exploitation and oppression of Indigenous peoples, enslaved Africans, and other historically underinvested people. So one housekeeping note, if you don't like the live caption at the bottom of your screen, you can click on the CC, the live transcript button that's at the bottom of the screen, and that will allow you to select no captioning. So let me now introduce two wonderful and amazing people who I have the pleasure and honor of knowing. Howard Wright is an entrepreneur and business executive. He's the founder and chairman of Seattle Hospitality Group and a board member of several related businesses in the Pacific Northwest and of the Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce of Seattle. He also sits on the board and is an owner of the Space Needle Corporation. In the civic and philanthropic arenas, Howard is deeply involved in the region's business, art, and education issues, and commits his time and leadership to numerous local, regional, and international civic and nonprofit governance roles. Kate Janeway works on environmental and social change issues, lending her fundraising skills and leadership to many local organizations over the years. Her own philanthropy has been influenced by her experience on the board and grants committee of the Seattle Foundation. She currently serves as trustee of the Nature Conservancy of Washington and of the Grousmont Foundation. Kate's wisdom is often sought in the environmental field in our region due to her lifetime commitment to environmental work, starting with a JD from Georgetown Law Center and her environmental law practice, and more recently, an MPA in environmental policy and natural resource management from the University of Washington. She is also a certified Hudson coach. So, Kate, Howard, thank you so much for being here today, for joining us and honoring us with your time. You have both been civic leaders, thank you for that, in our region for many years. How are you feeling about how Seattle is emerging from the pandemic?
Go ahead. I have a lot of thoughts about this, but I think the fundamental experience that I've had in COVID is the exposure of societal weaknesses. It's like a veil has been lifted, and we've seen all the things we've neglected to address for decades. And as a result, we realize that we have quite a lot of work ahead of us to figure out our approach to mental health and homelessness locally, drug dependence, and the unpicking of the social safety net, underinvestment in education, and then making healthcare more of a for-profit entity than a healthcare entity. So all of those things are concerns to me that I think we've been aware of them. We had a sense of functioning sort of in spite of them and hoping a solution would come. And I think COVID has really focused us on the fact that we have a big hill to climb now.
And I'll answer the question, I think, a little bit, Sarah, through the lens of employment and our tourism and hospitality business. And even though I keep fading in and out, I always stand in the shadow of my wife. So this is not a new experience. But we as responsible employers here in the Pacific Northwest, as many of our peer companies and industries and sectors, done our best to keep everybody at least above water, if not fully employed, and made sure that we've stayed in touch with them during the deepest and darkest parts of the pandemic, letting them know that we're here for them in every way possible and that we'll be here when we all emerge from this. So I remain optimistic that we'll get there. Just taking a lot longer than any of us expected, but I'm optimistic.
Absolutely. Well, such important topics, and I appreciate your optimism, Howard. I'm gonna carry that forward as well. What have you each been focused on over the last few years in terms of your civic and your philanthropic pursuits?
Well, the bad news for the philanthropy community is that I learned that I can work and be almost as effective without being present. So I just might carry that forward for the rest of my life. Sorry, can't make that meeting.
Yes.
But Kate and I, we pivoted, and this is probably going to come out a little bit later in this 45 minutes, but we pivoted. I would say about 4 or 5 years ago. We were both, I more than she, were both spread widely in different pockets of the community, and taking some lessons from some other philanthropists, the Rakes Foundation and others, that to go narrower and deeper to be more effective would be better both for the organizations in which we believe and support. It would be better actually for ourselves, our own mental health, and we could be more effective. And it was also a nice tool for when people do ask you to get involved. Always listen, of course, and be respectful and responsive, but thinking, I'm going narrower and deeper in a couple of areas, and I'm sure you'll respect, that decision of how we're going to commit our time. So then during the pandemic, continue to execute that. And I see that some of my friends from WSU and other places are on, and that is what I committed to, and both of us did. So we went narrower and deeper. Kate became the state chair of the Nature Conservancy for 3 years. And turned it into a full-time, pro bono job.
With pleasure.
But it was a great outcome. It was a good outcome for them and a good outcome for her, and therefore a good outcome for me. So it was effective the way we were lucky that turned out.
And for me, it's really always been the environment, as Howard has alluded to already. Our passions in life, I think for all of us, come from our experience. And I had a profound experience when I was 15 in my hometown of Santa Barbara. We had a massive oil spill. It destroyed 40 miles of beaches and the fisheries and wildlife. And we know the drill by now, sadly, and we just had a fresh one last week on the California coast. But that was before environmental laws, and it was before there was any serious thought that private industry should be concerned about the impacts they have on the environment. So out of that experience, and I got deeply engaged then and have stayed deeply engaged in from any direction that I can find with any set of skills that I can find to try and be as effective as possible at protecting and restoring the environment. So that's been my focus. That will be my focus. That said, there's so many cross-cutting issues that the environment affects and that affect the environment that, you know, I would be narrow-minded if I didn't also look closely at those issues that are not tangential and that are part of the whole approach we need to take to having a different kind of relationship with our planet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Howard brought up such good points earlier about all the different the ways that COVID is impacting and that the pandemic has impacted our perspective on so many things. And I think those cross-cutting issues and certainly the intersection of so many different issues and impacts on our communities. I know for me, at least, that's been a real eye opener. So I agree with that very much. Would also say, I remember, Kate, I think it was after your tenure at the Seattle Foundation on the board, and we were, I think it was about when I was leaving the Seattle Foundation to start my practice, and we connected, and you said something so wise, and you did something so wise, in my opinion, was that you said, I'm just going to take a year off and talk to people and reassess and figure out what I need to do. And I just thought that was so smart. So I think that, you know, and Howard, the narrower and deeper and really defining where your passions are. I commend you both. I love hearing this.
You know, it's been really interesting for me in philanthropy to knowing how private people are, both, you know, public organizations and private donors. And, you know, some people are, fewer people are loud and proud about it, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've noticed is it comes under the guise of communication and working with organizations and letting them know what your level of support is going to be and for how long it's going to be is something that I learned. And I've had it really has been a joy. I've had the joy of being on two really small foundations, being on the board of two really small foundations. When I say really small, I'm talking about, these are like neighborhood groups. This is a $250,000 annual budget, right?
Wow.
And one of the things that we did in governance is that we, thanks to a couple of board boot camps that they had the pleasure of enjoying, because I said, if you get me, you get my wife's boot camp. And that is educating new trustees who had never been involved in philanthropy or had never been on a foundation before about what the responsibilities are. And, you know, everybody has to be financially supportive. It's really important if a board is going to go to the community to raise support, to say that the entire board is 100% in. And that can be defined as anything, you know, I mean, hopefully it's financial resources.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember going to a board meeting of one of these two small organizations, and there was a wonderful, really smart science teacher on the board. He lived sort of more of a reclusive life, I would say. He lived off the grid, and, you know, this is 15 years ago, and solar power and things like that. And I went to him and I said, at a board meeting, I walked over and I opened my wallet and I said, take $1 out of my wallet and give it to the organization so you can at least say we have 100% participation. And then, so that lightened the mood. And I think he gave maybe $20 or something like that. But the point is that for everybody to say that, yes, we're involved, we're committed, we're supportive, and to be able to say that to community, that you have 100% support. Yeah. And then I'm on another board it's a university foundation, and I know one of my friends from WSU is on this, and no, I'm not talking about the foundation that's in Pullman, but it's another one, and just introducing the idea of making pledges so that organizations can count on what their support. I mean, how do you budget if you don't know what your income is going to be? If it's a guessing game at the end of every year, how much support will you receive? I think that that's important too. So, I mean, this particular organization, I committed 5 years at it's small, 5 years at $500 a year, but they know they're going to be getting it.
Yeah.
And so they can count on it. And also it helps on the personal level too, just knowing every year I'm going to be giving $500 to that organization. So anyway, communication and timing is good.
So important, Howard. Thank you. Those are, I mean, wow. I mean, that's the multi-year, you're just, thank you. That's wonderful. That's just wonderful. So shifting gears a little bit, you're part of a big philanthropic family. And also clearly from what we've already learned, so generous individually and as a couple. How do you make giving decisions together, or do you even do that? And then to dovetail, the second part of the question would be, would you say that this is in any way tied to the extended philanthropy of your family?
Let me take the first part of the question first, and then the second part is, it's bigger, frankly. In my life, we do make giving decisions together if they're large enough. We're really good at informing each other of the decisions that we've made.
It's better than reading about it later.
and what our thinking was behind it. But for the really material investments that are going to be significant and long-term, involving relationships, we do spend time talking about that and why it's important to us. And I think in those discussions, typically enlarging each other's perspective on both why they might like it and how we could possibly make our involvement more meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Sarah, I always remember to share with others what my level of support is when I'm asking other people for money. And some people I ask them to match that support, and other people I ask them to do whatever they're comfortable doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think it goes back to that, board being 100% in, whether it's a capital campaign or an annual fund, but just telling people what I'm doing and asking them to join me in doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So for the larger family, Sarah, should I take that part up?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
For the larger family, we have a family foundation, which has been around. I think Sarah knows exactly the date because we just looked at the timeline, but it started in the mid-90s. And I've been a trustee since that time. And we do make decisions together through a long and rigorous process of engagement with the issues, understanding the effectiveness of different organizations in that sphere, and weighing it against the amount we have to invest in deciding, where to go deep. So it's an important part of that learning together is an important part of my civic engagement. The passions of family members are different, and it's incredibly enriching to hear where people are engaged with their time and resources and how they're investing. And that does have a lot to do with where the foundation decides to invest significantly as well.
Mm-hmm.
How about you with the larger family?
No, I don't have anything to maybe add or to correct, but publicly. But one of the things that I learned, when Kate talks about the Family Foundation, I think the Family Foundation commits to certain sectors for more than 1 year, and then that way the sector can do a little bit of planning. But I learned at a gala 10 or 15 years ago called Evening of Hope, which is usually held in late January, early February, put on by the Seattle Hotel Association. And when they pick a recipient organization, the recent ones that come to mind for me are the Market Foundation, Mary's Place, and some others, but they make a 3-year commitment. So the recipient organization knows that gala is going to support them for 3 years. It's obviously, it's important to, I'm sure it is obviously important to the listeners and to ourselves about why that is. And it's for planning, right? But the other is, you want the organization not to be, I think in that case, I'm trying to remember how much they give away, but I think it's $400,000 or $500,000 each gala. And I haven't been on that board for some time now. But can you imagine an organization that's a recipient and they get one shot, like a booster shot, you know? And sorry, I guess that's the term of the time. But, and then sort of one and done. Well, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
You know, it does. 3 years might give you some planning where you can hire, you know, a key strategic staff member, or you might be able to fund a specific project. But if it's only 1 year, I mean, 1 year is better than no years. But when you can plan out 3 years, I think it's really important. So that was a lesson I learned. And I thought that was quite effective the way they do it.
Yeah, no, that is so, you're touching on such an important part of philanthropy that I think we're realizing more and more, that multi-year support, that, like you said, sort of the helping organizations to be able to plan long-term and count on it, even if it's $500 a year, or, you know, the level of support that is sort of relevant and commiserate with where that budget is. One thing, Howard, I would share, in my experience in working with you philanthropically, and I've worked a little more with Kate on the philanthropic side, but there's been a few times where you and I have collaborated, and where you are challenging the organization that you're involved with to utilize whatever support is coming to them in a way that leverages it, that brings them more, that allows them an opportunity to really think through how they can utilize the support to the fullest. And what I've seen in those scenarios is the tremendous respect and that these organizations have for you and working with you. And they really, it's clear that they have respect, and they're so honored by the fact that you care, the fact it's not just, you're not just writing a check when you do those things. You care about what they can do with it, how they do that, and that care, that attention, that your gift of time and helping them think through that is in my view, and sort of what I've sensed from those organizations, equally as important as whatever check is being written. And so I think that's really wonderful.
Thank you. No, that's a nice comment. And let me just, if I can just add to what you said for a second, I am going to be explicit here. I know almost everyone on the call are professionals, but if anyone on the call is a new philanthropist or a new giving officer, what we did just recently is that we found out we had an opportunity through a family channel, shall we say, to make a $75,000 donation to the Henry Art Gallery. And so we worked with the Henry, saying, what we'd really like you to do is to take the $75,000 grant and figure out a way to leverage it and go find some other donors and tell them that this is out there to come, but will other people match it as well? And so that's what it was. It's just leveraging, and was happy to be involved with that and help them get there. I think they raised maybe $200,000 or $300,000, and it's going to go toward underwriting admissions, free admissions for people on certain nights. So anyway.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't want to do it without your permission, but that was what I was thinking of, and it just really is such a great example.
It's easy to do. You can have this money if you leverage it.
Yeah. Right. And may get some
strings attached.
Yeah.
Strings attached.
Yeah.
A useful string.
So how do you in your family or even in the extended family involve younger generations and help them grow into philanthropy?
Shall I start?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In our family, it has been very intentional the way we've engaged the next generation, and our family foundation has been the core pathway for doing that. We began many years ago by making funds available out of the foundation to the next generation, to the extent that they were interested in engaging in a very thorough textbook best practices version of how you make a good giving decision. And you're in a position to know a great deal about this, Sarah, since you've been our advisor throughout this whole process. But it has been such a rich experience for that generation. And first, just to be invited to the table was profoundly meaningful to them. The enrichment that they have gained over time, just understanding more about the city and the region that they live in and what the issues are and how it might be possible to make a positive impact on that and how it was within their power to begin to do that. So that generation had a learning vehicle to begin their philanthropy, and everyone in that generation gets money to give, whether they give it together in a process.
Talk about numbers.
Well,
It's $5,000.
it's gone from 5,000 to what do they have now?
250,000.
250,000
Per.
Not per person, no. 5,000 per person.
Explain it is what I'm saying. That's
Okay.
what I'm suggesting.
Good suggestion. So 5,000 per person still currently, and
5,000 if they're doing the collective work. Yeah.
if they're engaged. Okay, so for engagement.
Underage, what? Under age 30?
Uh,
Or is it of a generation?
it's the whole generation.
Okay.
Anyway, $250,000, which has grown from, what was our original thing? They could,
10,000.
$10,000.
10 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, it's a couple decades on, out of that experience, we have our best new board members. The board representation is now equally among the adults of two generations. They have significantly raised our performance and the breadth of our knowledge about the issues in the community that are, some of them emerging, some of them longstanding, but that are profoundly meaningful to them and their generation, forming the world that they're entering. What more can I say? It's just been one of the rich experiences of our lives. And I know, because we've just talked about it, that this has been profoundly empowering of that generation. They already are great citizens, and they're going to be outstanding members of the community on their own behalf. We're proud of them.
I'm going to offer a slightly different view of that subject. But to Kate's point, where she just finished with, we're proud of them. And she opened with, they were profoundly proud to be there. And I'm going to suggest, no, we were profoundly proud to have them there.
Both for sure.
And one of the things that I have found about our active giving, and particularly for me, used to be young and idealistic, and probably neither of those right now. But what I have found, and Mike Connell is on this call, and others who have helped me and advised me, that I'm less passionate about the organization than I am about the message that it gives to others to be supportive and philanthropic to an organization. And also what it means for me and my own personal growth, and therefore I can lean in and help organizations. It sounds really selfish and self-centered, and it probably is. But I think we all have an ego, and I think we all want to learn and grow and contribute, be constructive, be positive, be professional, and help these organizations grow. But it's so much more about the human experience than it is about the institutional experience. And one of the things that I've learned is that when I've worked with major gift officers and they've left an organization to go somewhere else, where I thought that they were all about the organization. I remember the first time that happened to me, I was about 29, 30 years old. And I thought, wait, I thought I was all in for this organization. And I thought you were too. And what I realized is that I was all in with them. What I really like about this activity is the people with whom I get to work. That's what it's about. And I will follow a gift officer to a new organization because of the pleasure and the return that I get on my emotional investment in them. So it's about the people for me.
Such a true statement, Howard.
We're really proud of our kids. How many kids in that generation? 13? 13 kids, and some are all in and some are completely not interested. And they're not arrogant kids flying around in jets and driving sports cars and stuff like that. They're just thinking, yeah, okay, that's important to you. It's not important to me.
That's so true. They are. One thing I would just add to that. Thank you for that response, for both of those responses. I think those are, I mean, the description of the program, Kate, and the human experience rather than the institutional experience. I think those of us in philanthropy find that as well, Howard. But and to get to that place where you have those relationships and it's so relationship based is really it sort of makes it gives it a deeper meaning, I think, in the experience, a more profound experience in that way. The one thing I would add to the Next Generation program through the Grassmont Foundation is that one of the things that the board did and the family, the whole family really in buying into this so beautifully and so well was that from the very beginning, this Next Generation group was completely autonomous. You gave them the power to make decisions on their own, to take risks, to be their own leaders, to create their own governance systems. And they, I mean, to their credit, they have stepped up to the plate and done amazing work and continue to do amazing work. But that's a hard letting go of, you know, I don't see, in my experience, in my work, I don't see that very often, that the board, that the family is willing to say, you young people, and at the time they were very young, here's $10,000 and we trust you to figure it out. And so I really, that's always been such an inspiration to me in working with the foundation and with the Next Generation, is just that incredible trust and empowerment there. So how have philanthropic and wealth advisors and other advisors played a role for you over the years?
I just got nudged to go first, so I'm going to answer with thank you for that very good question, which means anytime somebody says that, they have no idea how to answer. Installing for time. But I'm going to go back to the people side of it, Sarah. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back to this. I really enjoy, why do I get involved in various organizations? And yes, the mission is important, but to me, it's working with the people that's more important to me. And so the people who I had the experience of working with earlier, you know, meaning earlier in my life, has been what's guided me. And it's about developing those relationships. And I'm going to stop talking there. It's just about the pleasure of working with the people. So developing those relationships with empathy and enthusiasm, having fun together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So to adding my perspective, I think, well, I know that my perspective is we're both very strongly self-directed when it comes to our philanthropy. And in each of our cases, although our backgrounds are different, it comes out of a deep sense of interest, passion, and responsibility that was inculcated in our family or our early experiences. In my case, environment. In Howard's case, growing up in a community with a family who has always felt that the privilege of being in business in this community carries with it an equal, at least, responsibility to contribute to the quality of the community. But that's a nice way of saying we really haven't asked for much advice, because we have such a strong sense of where we want to put our money down, and because we've been fortunate both in our exposure to the issues over time and our long relationship with you, Sarah, and I think my time on the Seattle Foundation, I have to credit for really expanding my perspective on needs in the community, what we can do, how they work together, and I've taken most of my direction from my own experience. Mm-hmm. I think that's true for both of us. Mm-hmm.
I think that my mind was going as Kate was answering, and I was listening to every word. But I just was thinking about, you know, she had a profound experience in her teens in the environment. And I think for me, people ask me, why am I a Seattle booster? Why am I, you know, I was quoted about 8 years ago. I was asked by, I think it was Puget Sound Business Journal, how do I feel about the Great Wheel opening in Seattle? And for those of you who don't know, my family and I are in tourism and hospitality and have been for 30 plus years, 40 years. And so this is another tourism destination that's opening in Seattle. And I said, I actually feel really good about it. Are they going to take away a little bit of our market share? I don't know, maybe, we'll see. But anything that's good for Seattle is good for all of us. And I don't mean to sound, that altruistic, but it really is the way that I feel. And so getting back to the civic and philanthropy side, people say, why are you such a Seattle advocate? And I say, Seattle's been very good to us. And we want to give back to Seattle in every way that we can. And that's why it's important. And when I say Seattle, I'm not being narrow or provincial. I mean, I'm talking about the whole Pacific, or the whole Puget Sound region, if not the Pacific Northwest. And the region's been good to us, and I feel a personal responsibility to be good to the region.
Yeah. Well, and I would attest, and I'm sure everyone on this call who knows you or has heard of you both, you walk that talk, Howard. Your family, you yourself, you as individuals, you as a couple, truly are giving back in tremendous ways. And so that's we're grateful. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So we talked about where Seattle and your philanthropy is today. What do you see being involved in over the next 3 to 5 years? I know you have causes you're committed to, but what do you view as sort of what's most important in our region? What's the most important to you in our region?
Spend our kids' inheritance.
Right.
I will just say that to just keep doing what we're doing. Is that an okay answer? I don't want to dodge the question, but we really like what we're doing, and we're really having fun, and we want to continue to do rinse and repeat. Basically, is wash once and rinse and repeat. Mm-hmm. And set examples. Somebody said to me, I see that you're on this philanthropy call today, and I'm not sure that I'm seeing you do that sort of thing before, and you certainly don't need to do it for yourself. So why are you doing it? And it wasn't in a challenging way; it was in a curious way. And I just said, just hoping to inspire others also. And if it does, or if anybody circles to us, I will look forward to meeting or taking the call or Zoom or a cup of coffee or adult beverage, whatever. I think that's what we can do here. I'd like to share one comment about mentoring. And maybe there will be, how many people are on this call? 47 people are on this call. Maybe there will be 2 times 47 eyes roll when I say this, but I do some, not as much as Kate, but I do some mentoring of young people. And one of the things that I tell them is, they're looking for what they think they may think they know what they want to do. Many don't. And they say that. And I say, I don't so much believe in this Hallmark card of, follow your passion and it will lead you to success. How do you know what your passion is, right? I didn't, not for a long time. And I think that if you are a curious person who's open to exploring opportunities, maybe even travel, taking a trip. I went on a volunteer trip in age 20 to do good work in a third world country, and came back and said, I really like what they do and I'm going to continue to support them. I continue to support them to this day. But I think being available for your passion to find you, that's the key point. Open yourself up for your passion to find you. And I think it will. So follow your passion. That's hard to do. It's so abstract. But being vulnerable, open, curious, critical, and exploratory, I think your passion will find you. So, yeah, over to you.
Well, as Howard has said, a rinse and repeat is a very concise way of putting it. But I think we both have entered that age where it's not so much that we're thinking of laying down a legacy, but where we have enough experience under our belt, positive and negative, to be to pass on some wisdom, to be enabling of the next generation to take leadership roles. And increasingly in my work, that's what I see. If I'm on a board and I'm working with others, my job is to make sure that when I roll off that board at an appropriate term limit time, which every board should have, they're very effective people who are capable of carrying the mission of the organization forward. So being generative, basically, is what I see as my work of the next however long I get to be doing this work. And as to me personally, it's going to be environmental work. I mean, the bad news is that the issues I've always been concerned with have this approaching existential issues kind of dimension to them. And that's just not good news at all. I think many of us have come to realize that if we want to have a healthy economy and a healthy society, we do need to have a healthy environment, and that those issues are very much interconnected at every level. So because I have a deep history there, because I've spent 50 plus years there, that's where I'm going to stay focused. And to the extent that I can inspire other people in that work, I want to be able to do that and to learn from them.
Thank you both. This is wonderful. I want to open it up to I have questions in my mind that I could ask you again, but I do want to allow audience members to ask questions, if that's okay.
That wasn't part of the rehearsal. I saw we got to the last question. I thought, oh, good, I get to go have lunch now.
Oh, I've seen you answer questions on the fly, Howard. I have no worries about it. So maybe, Jim, maybe we can go to gallery and see each other and see if anyone wants to jump in and ask a question. I think that if you want to, you could put it in the chat, but it would probably be easier and more efficient to go ahead and just kind of unmute yourself for the question and then remute yourself when you're done and go from there.
Maybe we should mute ourselves.
Well, let's see. Maybe, hold on. Maybe we lost Jim. Maybe I'm host now. Hold on.
We've got a question from David Fain.
So thank you both for being here. It's tremendously insightful, and SPAN is really very unique, having lived in other cities around the country, to have folks like you share your history and experience. I understand there's a fascinating story of how you consolidated ownership of the Space Needle, how it was several families and now it became yours. And I just would love to hear about that from you, as opposed to the urban legend that you shared with me.
You're not going to give me multiple choice? Come on, David. I will be as honest and transparent as I can. I hope it answers your question. I'm not sure it will, but the Space Needle started, everybody knows this, and I won't take up too much time on this answer. So the Space Needle started as an icon for the World's Fair in 1962. And there wasn't any money to build something iconic like that. There was money for the World's Fair, but not for something iconic like that. And so 5 people got together and formed a 5-sided figure that formed the Pentagram Corporation. And my granddad was one of those. He was a general contractor, built tall buildings, and he was the contractor on that. And in lieu of his fee, he took an ownership interest in the structure and invested more money in it also, because the fee would not cover that. And then, and that opened in 62. He died in 66. My dad and his sister inherited his share. And then over the years, you know, it wasn't, it was, you'll never hear me use the word tourist trap, but I just did, but you didn't hear that. And it wasn't a tourist trap, but I have to say that it wasn't the highest quality experience then that it is now, okay? And so I don't think that it was thought of quite as the operating asset that we're proud to think of it now. And so just that simple answer, David, is that my dad bought his partners out over a period of time. And they were all friends. They were all colleagues. There wasn't anybody who was a holdout or said no, or, over my dead body, or, sue me or anything like that. I will tell a little story, and that is that my dad died in 96, and he was young. He was in his late 60s. He was my age, a year older than I am now. And we as a family, by that time, he had taken his partners out, and it was a family-owned corporation. And we as a family were deciding to make a major commitment to renovating the Space Needle. And when he died, we got through the estate stuff, and we're having a family meeting, and we looked at each other and said, "Hey, we guess we're the grown-ups. We're in our early 40s, late 30s, early 40s, and we're the grown-ups at the table now. What are we going to do?" And somebody said, "Jump." And so we held hands and jumped and invested, and we're really proud that we did. We made a commitment to each other that we wanted to be proud owners of the Space Needle. It had been very quiet for a long time. People thought the Space Needle was city-owned, and we used to let them think that. But we decided we wanted to be proud owners. We were going to charge a fair price for a great experience, and we were never going to have to apologize for the experience that anybody paid for. And that was a commitment that we made. And it opened in 2000. EMP opened in 2001. Seattle Center became more of a destination. And then 5 years ago, we started the process all over again. And that's with some of you know that we now have a new glass floor and a whole new viewing experience up there. So that's our story. We have a family board, 9. There are 5 shareholders on the board and 4 completely independent outsiders. And this goes back a little bit to governance, right, that we were talking about in the philanthropic world. And in fact, the chairman of the board, non-executive chairman of the board, is not a family member for the first time. And we believe in running this as an arm's length family business, and proud of what we do. Long answer to your short question.
Thank you.
Other questions for Kate and Howard? Feel free to jump in.
I've got a question. This is Walter Empert. You mentioned, and thank you for being on here. It was really good insight. I have a question about partnership between the business community and philanthropy. You mentioned the Hotel Association Gala, which I've had the pleasure of attending a couple times. What do you think is the most effective way for business, or especially Seattle businesses, to partnership with philanthropy?
Time, really. And Walter, yes, I know I owe you money. I'll pay my bill at the end of the month. But the answer is, in my opinion, is time. There's so much talent in this town, and in your practice and everybody else on the phone here, that if you have time to be able to contribute to these organizations, and we all know, it's the old time, treasure, and talent. That's who you want on your board. And if you have time to do it, if it's during work, after work, weekends, we've all learned that we can work, what do we call this, electronically? I would say it's time. Kate, what do you think?
No, I agree. It's time, and your wisdom, and being a good ambassador for the organization you decide to spend time and resources on, making sure that you're telling other people about what they do and why you're passionate about it. That's the best possible thing you can do, widening the network for them.
I might jump in with a question. I'd love to hear any thoughts you might have about how gift officers or philanthropic advisors can work best or partner best with independent, self-directed donors like yourselves. I think a lot of folks who are coming out of the tech industry have similar mindsets and like to do their own research and background. So any advice you might have?
It's a great question. Matt, do you think that these individual harvesters of wealth coming out of tech and other organizations, I wish I had a sense that they knew what the role a major gift officer plays, and how they really are sincere professionals, and how they can help a donor be effective, as opposed to just saying, let me take you out to dinner so I can ask you for money. That's what I wish. And maybe they do. I don't know that they do. we know a lot of people, we all do, meaning we collectively, we all know a lot of people who have made, great fortunes in this town and other places as well. And that takes a lot of hard work and dedication, and that's a lot of heads down, and that's a lot of, 7-day weeks, things like that. And so how can we get them networked to major gift officers and to recipient organizations, I think is the question.
I have a question. Beyond giving and investing time, have you also made investments that are philanthropic investments? So, Kate, you're interested in the environment, and can you talk a little bit about that? Have you made other true investments that are, return on capital investments through your philanthropy?
So, Jane, are you talking about impact investing?
Or changed your portfolio up to make it more in line with your philanthropic investing?
Well, yes. So I'm the maven of this. I'm controversial in my family. I had a small inheritance from my parents who both died relatively young, and it was beneath notice really for the good friend who agreed to take on my portfolio. But added to that, I think he was shocked when I screened it for no oil and gas, no extractive resources, no guns, no cigarettes. No. She's like, what? Do you want this to grow at all? And, I've always, I'm far from being a pure person, but I have always thought that, where I put my money is an exact expression of my values, and how I enlarge my resources so I can give them more effectively. That also has to come from a well-considered place. Our family foundation is just undertaking the same process. We have advisors who have grown it beautifully, but I'll scan through and I'll see Monsanto there, and they're gone. It's wow. You just can't have that. And so you may hear how it's controversial in our family, but yes, I do consider that consistently, Jane. Thank you.
I heard a really great lesson repeated to me last week, something we've all heard. I don't think we've heard this specific question, but we've all heard the message. So the head of JP Morgan was in town last week and hosted a dinner and Q&A like this. And he told the story about his grown daughter. He has 3 grown daughters, and one of them wrote a very impassioned letter just about 4 years ago right now. After this guy's name is Mr. Diamond. So Mr. Diamond had agreed to join one of President Trump's business advisory councils. And Diamond's daughter wrote him a scathing 4-page letter. Dad, how could you? This goes against every value that you hold dear, et cetera, et cetera. And he wrote back and he said, if I'm not there talking, nobody's going to hear, right? He said, Martin Luther King would have been there every single day just to try to get the message. It may be water on a rock. And I look at that way, and through impact investing, Jane, is I would go on the board of a tobacco company. And not to be disruptive and not to be an activist investor or anything like that, but just to bring a different perspective, making sure that people are thinking about stakeholder value, stakeholder investing, not just shareholder investing. And I think that's, to answer the question that Kate answered, my answer would be stakeholder investing is something that I've pivoted to. So.
And I do think that, I'm a big advocate of shareholder activism and think that it can be very effective. So it may not be exactly what you're describing.
I'm fading to backstage now.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you. That's fantastic. I think we have time for one more question. Anyone wants to jump in?
Actually, I have a question.
Hi, Jen.
How are you? Thank you for your time today. It's been absolutely wonderful. This is my mother. She and I own a nonprofit consulting firm together in Spokane. And just kind of curious, would you consider bridging the gap as far as your philanthropic diversity towards Spokane? And
yeah.
And would you also consider maybe doing this similar form for the Inland Northwest Plan Giving Council in Spokane? Because You have so much to offer.
So much wisdom.
Yes.
Yeah, we should talk offline about that, but I have one sister-in-law who is from the other side of the mountains, and we definitely do get engaged in the eastern side of the state.
And I went to school in the East. I'm a 509er. I went to Pullman. So
Good.
yeah.
So did she.
So did I. I helped the WSU Foundation get started. Good.
No, yes, thank you. It's flattered to be asked, and let's talk offline about that. That sounds great.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Great way to bring the whole state into the mix. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Mark to officially say goodbye, but I want to thank you both from the depths of my heart. And it's such a pleasure always to be in community with you. And I'm so grateful to you both for your time and your willingness to share your story and experience. So thank you. And I will turn it over to Mark Davis.
Thanks, Sarah.
Great job, Sarah. Great job, Howard. Great job, Kate. Thank you for inspiring us. 3 takeaways. The first being, remain optimistic, but recovery has sure taken a lot longer than I expected. Number 2, going narrower and deeper is proving out to be a wonderful strategy in our philanthropic planning. And I think the issue relating to time is so valuable. I remember Phil Smart had a saying called the third 8. And he had 720 conversations about the fact that you sleep 8 hours, you work 8 hours, and you can contribute 8 hours a day. And the last presentation he ever made on that was at SPAN, and it actually is on film, as your presentation today is going to be on film into perpetuity. So with that, we sure look forward to seeing you all next year. Thank you very much for all you do for us. And again, Sarah, thank you for hosting. Jim Hopper today did do the hosting through the Bainbridge Island Community Foundation. So hats off to Jim for doing that. And with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, everyone.